What is author marketing mastery through optimization, you ask? I'm going to tell you. It is absolutely, bar none, the best way for authors to make a living selling their books. Are you tired of feeling like you have to be on social media 50 hours a week just to sell a few books, and then frustrated when that time doesn't actually lead to any book sales? Are you tired of hearing people say that you just have to be patient with the social media game for a long time so that you can build that following and that trust? Yeah, I was too, because there's only one of me, and Ammo solves that problem. Now here's the deal. It's a system that can actually guarantee results, and I'm not the one doing the guaranteeing, and I don't think that Steve Piper, who founded Ammo, would literally say that it's a guarantee. But what's a guarantee here is that when you spend advertising dollars in the right way, you get results and you're profitable. Okay, the concept here is if you spend $1 and make $2, you are profitable. And Ammo does that for its authors. I want you to check out the link in the show notes because this program has the ability to change your life. And hey, it's not for everyone. If you're a traditionally published author, it might not work for you because your margins will be too small to get profitable advertising on your own. That's something you'll have to take up with your publisher. But if you're self-published, if you're indie published, this thing could be great for you. If you have a few books out, especially if you're a series writer, this is a game changer. The whole podcast is now part of the Ammo family. So you'll notice every Wednesday, this show is Ammo Edition. But even on Mondays, you're listening to a show that exists because this author, this host of the podcast uses Ammo and makes money selling books. It's a beautiful feeling. I encourage you to check it out. My guest today is David Sherrer, the other half of David and Lydia Sherrer. Lydia joined Ammo some years back to help her sell her books. And David was able to leave full-time employment shortly after and sell games he designed to accompany her books. So the two of them work the Ammo process, selling books and games. What's so unique about their process is that they are able to focus very heavily on paperback sales. So if you've listened to this show for a while and heard a little bit about the Ammo program and thought it was only for ebooks, well, this is the episode for you because we're going to go into some depth about selling paperbacks and all of the different things that David and Lydia do. If you are like me, when you hear David talk about having 5 pallets of paperback books delivered to his house, you get chills of excitement. Because if you get 5 pallets of books, that means you're selling 5 pallets of books. And it means you're earning enough money that you can afford a print run that large. Go ahead and picture it. This is the power of what Ammo can do for you and the future you can have using the system. I've been struggling lately with my ads, and so it was nice today to launch a new one that seems to have gotten me back into the green. And I will say that the ad process can be a little bit finicky. It can mess with your brain, and I think we talk about that in this conversation with David. So I hope there's a lot for you to bite into and chew. As always, I'm going to have links throughout the show notes so that you can check out Ammo for yourself, see the testimonials, see the videos, see if it might be a good fit for you. And I will have links in the show notes for Lydia's books and even David's games if you want to check those out. They're going to give me a link to their doorbuster deal so that you can get their books and games as cheap as humanly possible. There's nowhere that you're going to get a better deal. So go ahead and click on that as well if you want to check out their work. And please enjoy my conversation with David Sherrer.
This is TRBM Ammo Edition. If you're a published author and want to make a living writing books and selling them to avid readers, you've come to the right place. There's simply no program that's more successful at driving readers towards the books you've written. So the only thing you have to worry about is writing a great book. And the system within Ammo takes care of the rest. Thanks for listening to this conversation.
I do have to start at the kind of worst point of the conversation because I think it frames up something about you and Lydia and your generosity, as well as I think there's a life lesson in it. But a little while back, you had invited some people in the ammo group to join you at a book conference, kind of a Comic-Con, to help sell paperbacks. And the benefit of it was that you got to learn your process, which when we dive into your process, I think people are going to have their jaws not just on the floor, but somewhere 6 feet under and have to like dig them back up. It's really crazy what you're able to do. But I backed out on you at the last moment in the least professional way possible, and missed out on an opportunity. So framing it up there, talk to me about what you're capable of doing at a book fair or a Comic-Con, in terms of selling books and building a readership, because you're doing something a little bit different with physical copies than a lot of people are doing with electronic copies through ammo.
Yeah, so we lean heavy into physical books, like paperback books, because that's kind of how we started. We started doing conventions and things like that. Back when Lydia had 2 books, and we had like maybe 40 copies of each. And sitting at a table in a super tiny convention, doing our first convention. I've got a background selling things in Ren fairs and stuff, and Lydia's got a background also in Ren fairs selling art. So I did juggling and she did art. So we both have a in-person sales background from that. So conventions, comic conventions and things like that were just like a natural step for us. Mm-hmm. The one that you were supposed to go to, Lexington Comic and Toy Expo, is huge. It's one of the largest ones around where I live. And we sold hundreds of books. I think we were just shy of 400 books. Wow. And we sold 60 or 70 of my games. And that was just in one weekend. And we try to do as many conventions as we can, because what happens is you go to these conventions and people like walk by and they're like, "Oh wow, here's an author, here's someone who actually writes books. Like these people actually exist." And you get to talking to these people, and that you build super fans really quick that way. Like, we have tons of people that go to these conventions, and they follow us from one convention to another when we announce our schedule. And
wow.
We've got there's a guy that comes up in Cincinnati every time that we go up there. He dresses like a hobbit and pays us in Sacagawea gold dollars.
Wow, that's hilarious.
Like, we get, and he's like one of the first people to back our Kickstarters. Is like, wow, super fan. Every time we have a new book come out, he buys a digital copy right away and waits for us to be in a convention around when to come in and give us a giant stack of gold dollars for whatever book it is that came out. But
that's fun.
The thing that I like to do in these conventions is I also network a whole lot. 2 different types of conventions that we do. We do networking conventions and we do money-making conventions. Lexington was a money-making, really good convention to learn our process for sales. But then we're doing LibertyCon coming up in a couple weeks down in Chattanooga, I believe. Okay. And it is it's a networking convention for us. We're not going to make a whole lot of money when we go down there, but it's where we're going to go to meet some other people in the field.
Interesting.
That's how Lydia met John Ringo, who she did a novel with. She did the Transdimensional Hunter trilogy. It's a Bane trilogy. There's going to be 4 books in it. Not really.
It's a 4-book trilogy.
That's how their books work. But some of these conventions are worth it just for the knowledge that you pick up, just for like finding where to go, who's doing what convention, who did what, just comparing notes.
Sure.
Anytime I go to a money-making convention, I still try to network there too. I try to do like a Saturday night, all the authors get together and have a dinner. So we just sit around and talk and get to know each other and stuff like that, and try to build like a community. Yeah. Because there's a ton of times whenever like somebody, like an author, a couple booths down, really needs help with something, and I'm either an expert at it or they've forgotten something and I have an extra one in my tote, and I never would have known had I gone out and walked around and talked to people. Yeah. And sometimes I need help too. Like Lydia's car broke down over the weekend for Lexington, and we had, it was just me at the table at that point because our other help hadn't gotten there yet.
The other help.
the other person.
You're welcome.
This guy named Wayne Kramer was the other author that was there. Fantastic young adult book series. But I couldn't leave the table because it was just me. And so I had to go to one of the other authors and go, hey, you've got like a couple people helping you out. And somebody can go pick my wife up. She's like 3 exits down or 30 minutes away or wherever she was. And so like that community is great. Like I absolutely encourage people to build their community and establish a presence and just be a good person.
Right. I think it's challenging. I will say from my perspective, if I'm just being the jerk that I am, it is so hard. It feels like to get a foothold in the community, to sell books, to even think about making a living as an author, that I think my selfish mind sometimes takes over and asks like, what's in it for me? I hope at least one person listening knows that feeling and also struggles with it, because it's not like I'm giving into that thought process, but it certainly is something that returns for me a lot of times. I know that I need to be a good literary citizen, and I hope that this podcast is that to a degree for a lot of people. But I would be lying if I said that I started it or that I've done much of anything just purely from an altruistic perspective. So it's one of the things I really love about you guys. I was introduced to Lydia because I was having trouble with my sales page, and she just jumped up and said, hey, I'd love to have a look, and I'll give you some input on what's going on there. And looked it over and gave me some really good feedback that helped me, and it helped me move closer to being profitable through my ammo sales page. One thing I want to do now before we move further is actually take a step back, because you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned Kickstarter. So I want to have a conversation about Kickstarter as it relates to ammo and how you're feathering that in. And then I want to also talk about specifically with you, how you're using the ammo funnel to sell paperbacks, because I think it's a lot more challenging with the margins on a paperback to be profitable through ammo. So those are two things I want to touch. So let's hit on, let's start with Kickstarter. I've had a couple of guests on here, and I'm guessing because of the fact that you're involved in that community, you might even know Robin and Michael J. Sullivan.
Those names sound very familiar.
Okay, but maybe not. Okay. So Michael he views what they did with Kickstarter as kind of founding the process of really having authors use it as a platform to sell books. And then Brandon Sanderson gave him a nod as being the person that he learned from. So he was watching what Michael was doing. And that's how he decided to do his Kickstarter. So I think that they're pretty well known, but if they're in different genres, you can easily miss. There's just so many authors out there. But so you're using Kickstarter to sell books. Are you selling your games there as well, David?
Yes, that's how we got the funding for my first game.
Awesome.
We needed about $10,000 to get the game just printed, like the smallest one you could possibly do, and we ended up getting $46,000.
Beautiful. That's so cool.
So we made over 4.5 times what we asked for, which meant that I now have a room that's once held 3,300 copies of a thing. Wow. And if you've never seen 3,000 of a thing, 3,000 of a thing is a lot more than you realize.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just look up Michael J. Sullivan. We have a whole lot of friends in common on Facebook, but I don't know if I've ever met him.
Yeah. Well, that would be something for you after this is over to reach out to them. I bet you have a lot in common, actually. And they're phenomenal people, some of the most generous people I've ever met. So you sold games, and Lydia's selling books through Kickstarter as well, I'm assuming?
We don't Kickstarter books anymore.
You don't? Okay.
We used to back when we didn't have the capital to do a print run as large as we wanted to.
Yep.
And we also used it for pre-orders, but Amazon is better pre-order stuff now than they used to, and we can also do pre-orders now from our own website.
Awesome.
So because of those two things happening, no longer start our books. But if we ever do a project that's like we're doing art book right now. The art book was part of our previous Kickstarter. It was one of the stretch goals. That's the type of thing that we would do a Kickstarter for. Because it's not our normal product. So anytime we branch out, that's basically what we would do. My next game, it looks like we're gonna have to kickstart that because we just don't have the capital to print the quantities that it is needed to make it purchasable.
Yeah.
Because if you can't print on demand like you can for books, like if you just
Right.
need 100 books, you can get it from Amazon,
Yeah.
get author copies, and it's
Yep.
fine. But whenever you're printing like your 95 count deck of cards,
Mhm.
small box, you have to print those in 3 to 5,000 in order to get them cheap enough so that people can afford to buy them. Because if I'm like, hey, I've got a deck of cards for $50, that's not going to fly. Get a deck of cards for 25. That
Yeah.
that would.
Yeah. Now, when you're printing off a game like that, uh, how are you driving? I mean, you have the audience. Is there overlap in your audiences so that Lydia's readers are interested in your games and vice versa, or do you try to keep those two audiences
No,
segmented?
we're using the same IP.
Awesome.
So my game, Lydia's books are about a wizard, a witch, and a magical talking cat,
Hmm.
and my games so far star the magical talking cat.
Gotcha.
Uh,
That's
so
awesome. So you've
Sir
created a
Edgar
very
Allan,
interactive.
yeah. So Sir Edgar Allan Kipling, Magical Talking Cat, is the main character and star of the Cat Magic game.
Hmm.
Um, and the next game that I'm doing is going to be called Outflank, and it's going to star the four of the main characters in the book are going to be the characters with the decks of cards that you're playing against.
That's
So
so much fun.
I absolutely leverage her IP as much as I can,
Yeah.
because it's our biggest valuable resource that we have right now is the IP
Yeah.
that she's created. Um, but you don't have to know anything about the books to play the games. And I
Yeah.
actually use our ammo funnel, the same ammo funnel that you would use for books. I've modified stuff to make our ammo ads work for games as well.
Yeah,
So
I've long suspected that that's the case. I feel like the way that Steve teaches ammo, it's going to take an enterprising, slightly unethical person to realize that you could change ammo and sell that program to somebody who wants to do something else in business. Because the process of ammo is honestly, it's what makes it so amazing is he tells you exactly what to do. No other program I've ever been part of is doing that. They'll rah shish and and get you all worked up and excited, but then you sit in front of that ad and you're like, how do I actually design the ad? And they don't know. They actually don't know how to design the ad. Even ClickFunnels. I really like Russell Brunson pretty well. I've mentioned him on this podcast from time to time. I like him as a person, but I was part of the program until I could refund it. It's quite expensive compared to what Steve is doing, and they have some cool resources like you can check your keywords to see if they're good copy or not. But when it comes to designing an ad, they don't have a process. How do you test this ad? How do you see what people like? How do you figure out how they can refine their ads when an ad doesn't hit? Because I think that's the truth for all of us. So I do want to step a little bit back and ask you about your process with Lydia. There was a time before you started Ammo where you didn't know how to design an ad. And I'm assuming you didn't design the perfect ad the first time, right?
Well, Lydia was the one signing out at the very beginning, and we
Yep.
absolutely didn't do it right.
You didn't do it right,
Lydia
you
did
said?
it. Yeah, Lydia. But before we did ammo, there was a year or two where we were doing things on our own,
Yep.
and we made no money. Didn't know what we were doing. The only times we ever made money is when we went to conventions,
Yeah.
sold physical books at conventions. We were trying to send people to our Amazon sales page, and we couldn't see if we were making money or not. We
Yeah.
couldn't see. The only way we could see is if our rank was going up. That's not a very good test of if you made money on your investment. And then Lydia one day saw Steve's face on an ad, and I was working as a telecommunications engineer, and like a soul dragging of a job, like corporate. You know what? So Lydia comes to me and she's like, "Hey, I want to take this course. It's really expensive." And I'm like, sure, we can take it. Well, I'm all on board. I don't want to do what I'm doing right now forever and trying to build your career. So whatever resources you need to get there, and go for it. So she set up the meeting with Steve and got into the ammo project, and she took this course and looked overwhelmed the whole time.
Yeah.
In fact, there's been a couple additions to the course based on things that Lydia got wrong during the time that she was taking the course, like reminders to to check certain things.
Yeah.
Um, but then a couple years ago, I was at 2 or 3 now. I was at home, middle of COVID. I was always on call because of the particular nature of my job.
Mm-hmm.
I designed phone systems, and then people would install them incorrectly and then call me because my name is on the design and tell me that my design didn't work whenever it was in fact that they did it wrong.
Yeah.
I complained to Lydia about how I didn't want to do that anymore, or I didn't want to go gaming, have a gaming event scheduled the next day, and I'm like, I don't feel like it anymore. And she's like, you should quit your job right now. I make 3 times what you make. And I was a highly paid engineer.
Yeah.
So she showed me the math, and I turned in my 2 weeks notice that Monday, because that was a Friday that she told me that. So on Monday, I turned in my 2 weeks notice for a job I'd been at like almost 15 years.
Wow.
And I took over ads, and my very first ads were amazing. They did really, really well. But I had Lydia's knowledge to lean on. But that shows how comprehensive the ammo course is. I was able to pivot from phone engineering to ammo with no problem because the instructions were clear enough.
Yeah.
I built up an audience based on some research that I was doing, and set my first test ads out, and then test ads did really well. And then I've just been doing that ever since. I do ads slightly different than other people. We do cost cap ads.
Okay.
So we try to leverage cost caps, and I run there's a 250 ad limit on the ads you can have on Facebook.
Okay.
And I know because I'm constantly running into that limit and having delete ads, and because my ads don't all spend at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes whenever they would make money, they'll kick in, and if they wouldn't make money, they don't spend any money.
Oh, wow.
So
that sounds really technical. Is it as technical as it sounds?
Once you sit down and look at it and start thinking about it, it makes sense.
Okay.
But like trying to explain it's real awkward.
Okay, that's fine.
If you set up a cost cap on Facebook on their ads, if Facebook doesn't think it's going to make that cost cap, if it doesn't think it's going to make that cost, it just won't show your ad. But on days that it does think it's going to make it, it shows that ad to everybody. It wants to get as much money as you can.
I gotcha. So instead of doing like, say, $100 a day, it's going to do $500 on Wednesday because it knows that Wednesday shoppers are just really ready to buy your product. And then it'll shut it back down on Thursday because it doesn't feel like conditions are correct. Is that a really dumb way to describe it? Okay.
No, that is very close to being accurate.
Okay.
It'll constantly, they'll do like $1, $2 a day, because every day it'll try.
Sure.
And then we'll see if it can make that budget. And if it's just like, well, this is impossible today, it'll skip it.
Yeah.
But I've got like 100 ads doing that.
Yeah.
So not all of them are absolutely terrible every day.
Sure.
Some days we spend like almost no money, but like holidays that show up, like Memorial Day happens and 4th of July, things like that, where people usually manually turn off, or some people manually turn off their ads because they know their spend's going to be atrocious those days because they can't compete with big advertisers. On those days, for me, I don't change anything. My ads just don't spend that day. And then on like the Monday or whatever afterwards, they kick back up and start working again.
Wow. Well, I mean, in some point, I'm going to have to dive into that because I think that sounds like something really effective. And the other thing I want to pinpoint is it sounds to me like you have variations of an ad. And so like on one day, an ad that might not be successful shut down, but another ad that's a variation will be successful. It's so confusing to me how in the world does Facebook know that the variation will be successful on a given day that another one wouldn't? That seems like magic. Cat magic.
It's not even variations. So a lot of times it's just different copies of the same ad.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So whenever I make ads, I make like 50 at a time. So I'll have, we'll do the standard ammo process where you get your pictures and your body and your headline all straightened out. And then you'll from that usually end with several ads. Well, I do several ads, but then I do several types of those ads. So some of my ads will be free book giveaway. Some of my ads will be going to our paperback stuff, and some of my ads are going to our ebook stuff. And if we don't have our audiobooks, the ability to advertise for audiobooks right now, or I do an audiobook set as well. Those rights are owned by Media at the moment. We're waiting for those to revert back to us. But so I end up with like 48 ads, I think, is what the math turns out to be whenever you have like all those factors together. And then I release those out into the world, and then do a really savage purge of them over the next few days. Yeah. And trim them down to about 20 or so of those new ads. And then the ones that are doing good at that time will be good, and then they'll eventually like peter out, and they'll come back up, and they'll peter out, and they'll come back up. And sometimes they'll get out of control and just start spending ridiculously, and I'll have to turn them off. But for the most part, if my ads aren't spending money, I just leave them alone because they're going to spend money eventually. And so I need that space to make new ads.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. For one, anybody who's listening right now and thinking like it sounds like we just switched into a different language, we'll kind of leave off on some of the technical details. But what David just talked about is really high level, cool thing that you could do that actually would make the process a lot easier for you. I babysit my ads pretty regularly to make sure that they're doing what I want them to do. I have to manually back off the ad spend if I start to tank and ROAS and different things like that. Which even that sounds like a different language, I'm sure. How long did it take you to get to a point where you started to riff on Steve's process? Because I think that's another thing. If somebody's listening and has never tried anything like this before, just the idea of running an ad seems really overwhelming. I can say that from experience. I've only been running ads since February. It's really overwhelming the first time. And I think it speaks to the process that he's created, that you're so comfortable with the mindset of creating ads that you started riffing and adapting them for your own needs. How long did that take? I know you said Lydia started first, so she gave you kind of an on-ramp.
Well, I come from a background of sound engineering, where a lot of the work that I used to do, since it was so cutting edge, was try it and see. So I from the start was trying to figure out what all the knobs and levers did. So I'd be like, all right, let's tweak this thing. Let's see what happens if I tweak this. What if we do this type of thing instead? And I would test things. And that's one of the things that made me have so much to say on our ammo calls that we do. Is that like I would randomly get an idea and be like, I wonder what would happen with this. I wonder what would happen if I just sent them straight to the checkout page, or send them to a condensed landing page. And I would do all kinds of tests just so I could know what knobs did what. And it was, the ammo course was so in depth that it was pretty easy for me to figure out what knobs I could turn without tanking. Because I just looked for the things we were already modifying. And just tweak them a little more. But it was about 6 months before I got comfortable enough that I knew what I was doing, enough that I could talk the lingo and not be just overwhelmed whenever I go into the ammo calls. But if you were more adventurous than me, it might not take that long, but I wanted to make sure that I had income to spend on my tests before I started doing random tests.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's I'm still in the early stages enough that I'm thinking about getting one ad consistently profitable, let alone two, let alone three, let alone 250, let alone tweaking anything, So it's mind blowing to me. I like being in this position to host a podcast about ammo, and be still relatively ignorant. Sometimes I feel like I don't even know the questions to ask, and that's probably one of the only downsides I can see, is that there's so much that you're doing that could help a lot of authors out if they could understand the power of what you've got going. One question that does really burn in my mind is the physical product seems to matter to you and to Lydia an awful lot. And I think that comes from your days in conventions, but you're still running funnels through ammo for paperbacks on Facebook, right?
Yeah. You get put into the same funnel. It's worded so that no matter if you get the paperback or if you get the ebook, you're still put into our newsletter and like that. You'll get different emails from our our funnel depending on where your entry point is, but it sends you to the same place where you're getting updates on things that we're doing and products that we're putting out. But
Do you
it's
sell
the same.
packages when it's paperbacks? Is it like one
Oh, yeah.
paperback or two or five? And then same with the games. So are you selling one game or two at a time?
So with the paperbacks, we sell we have a doorbuster bundle, which is book 1 and 2 and a novella. So sorry, it's not every bunch of stuff. So we've got our main books and then a novella and then book 2, and it's like pretty comparable to our doorbusters. So it's like $14.99, something like that.
Oh wow! Okay.
No, what our no, it's 2021. So it's pretty comparable to our ebook bundle in price. And then you get the option to add 2 more books onto it. You get book 4 and book 5.
Gotcha. It's like a value add or an upsell at the checkout.
An upsell, yeah. And with our ebooks, it is like the first 4 or 5, and then you get to add on the rest of them. Because she's got 7 books out in the series, 2 novellas, and a couple standalones. So we have a lot more books that we can add in that. And so but we try to keep the price comparable. So whatever we're doing our price wise for our ebooks, we wanted to have it similar priced for our paperbacks, and we had to figure out which paperbacks we could offer for that. Yeah. And I get 10 to 20 on a normal day, 10 to 20 books or package sales. So that's anywhere between 3 and 12 books. Wow. Physical books. And it got pretty overwhelming real quick. Yeah. Packaging those. So we were in the situation. I debated with Steve about it, about how we weren't in a position to hire somebody to come in and package books because we weren't making enough money to do that. And he was like, "You're sending out like 200-300 books a week. Yeah. You're mailing out a lot of books. You need to look into that." And then we've grown since then. So we've got a girl that comes in. You'll probably see her in the background of this video eventually. She's going to show up any minute now and start packing books for us. So wow. Okay. Reach out and acquire help. That's amazing. I'm so early in the process again that for a while there I was doing probably 2 paperbacks a day. And because I live in a small town, I walk out my front door and there's an apartment complex across the street from me. And I go behind that complex down an alley, and then the post office is the next street over. So I just walk with my books into the post office, and it's really, it's a gratifying, fun moment. And the people at the post office know me, and that's exciting, but I always joke with them and I can't help it. I think partly because I want to sell more books and I feel a little bit silly just bringing like onesies and twosies. But I'm always like, hey, it's great to have books today, but I'm looking forward to bringing a wagon load down. There's something about physical books, paperback books going out to customers that just feels more real to me. I've tried to change my mindset, but I love the feeling of packaging my book and walking it down to the post office. But I hear you. I still don't sell enough that I can't do this. I write handwritten notes to paperback buyers still. So that's something. Yeah, exactly. We used to sign the books and do things like that. Yep. We just can't anymore. Absolutely we not. Sold since we've been talking, we have sold 24 books, paperback books on our website. Since we've been talking. Now that is a lot. That's more than I was expecting. But that is what we have done today, like since we started having this conversation. Yeah. Well, that's phenomenal. That's the power of the program. And I think it's really good. So I'm pretty shameless about trying to pitch ammo. I've been telling a lot of people I know about it, because if you're an author and you have good books out and you're writing quality and you're making sure that the editing is up to snuff and everything is good about the product itself, the only thing you need to do is get in front of people. I want to walk back too, because that brings me to a point. Were you or Lydia ever scared to do the advertising? Did it ever feel like, wow, that's money I'll never get back? When was the mindset shift? And talk to me through that process. It was terrifying. It was a lot of money that we didn't really have to lose. That's why me and Lydia sat down and had a conversation about it. We had I am downplaying conversation. Like, it was a very long, doing math and getting out spreadsheets and going, all right, can we afford this? Like, I'm going to skip some lunches. Like, this is a lot of money and it's a really big deal. And then we started doing it. Lydia was doing it full time, and we weren't selling any to start with. We just weren't seeing any growth in it. We found out eventually it's because we were doing it wrong. As I mentioned previously, the things that we did way wrong in the beginning of the thing, and I was not involved in it at all. I was go to work 9 to 5, 9 to 9 mostly, because on call stuff, and like hating life because I would do all that. I'd come home and I'd see Lydia super stressed out about the Amazon product, and man, I wish I could take this over for you. This is the type of stuff that I love. I love getting into those numbers. I love the marketing. I love talking to people and doing stuff with marketing.
Yeah.
And then one day, like a month or two in, came home and Lydia's super happy. What's going on? What's happening? But I paid our electric bill. Yay! Paid our electric bill. He's like, no. I paid our electric bill. I'm like, oh, you paid our electric bill with money you made. Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
And like that was the shift for us. Like whenever she started taking over more and more bills, without me realizing it, because she did the finances for us.
Yeah.
And gradually it just got better and better. Started doing more and more of her income. And always without my knowledge. I thought that I was the breadwinner. Like, I hate my job. And she's like, just quit.
Yeah.
So it was a long, hard road, but it was absolutely worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my feeling as well. I've been talking with listeners. I run 2 episodes a week. One of them is not technically Ammo Edition. So one is still just the TRBM podcast. So I'm doing a series on getting your books into libraries right now. But what's that?
I actually started listening to the first one. Right?
Oh, thanks, man. And so my ad account right now is suspended, restricted, because of nothing I did wrong. And I can get on the phone, or typically it's a chat with Facebook people. And they'll be like, yeah, we don't see any violations, but it's under review and there's nothing they can do. And I keep like banging my head against the wall. It's very, very frustrating. I was going somewhere with that.
That's happened to us a couple times.
Yeah.
We put out an ad that had a smiley face in it. And the ad like violated something, and we got our ad account suspended for like a month.
My God.
We were sweating bullets and trying to figure out what we're going to do, because that's where we make money.
Exactly.
And so I was on the phone with Facebook, our Facebook rep that we have, like over and over again. And eventually just came back one day, just back. But
randomly.
All of our data was wrecked because we didn't have any sales. So we had to go back and build everything back up again. That's happened to us twice now while I've been working on it. I don't know if it's happened before when I hadn't taken over yet. But I've gone through that. It's rough.
It is rough. It's frustrating. Yeah. And mine is I'll reach out to them and I'll be like, hey, I understand you're giant corporate people. Like you maybe can't do anything in the position you're working in, but this is my livelihood we're talking about right now. Yeah. I'm not able to pay bills because you've completely shut down my source of revenue. Now, I think that leads into the next piece of the conversation I think is so important, is that you do have at this point a backup in your emails. Yes. You've built a large enough list of emails.
Our account getting shut down actually made us realize that we needed to diversify our income a lot.
Yeah.
So we started pushing forward on our Patreon page. We started ramping up our in-person sales. That's one of the reasons that we started doing the physical paperback books.
Oh, cool.
As hard as we have been. I got really active on other social medias. I got really active on like Reddit and just other social media places that I was already. I'm not saying people should go to be active on Reddit. Reddit is a terrible place unless you know exactly where to go.
Yeah.
So I got active on the Suggest Me a Book Reddit.
Okay.
We pull some sales from that. Just whenever people go, I would like a book and our book fits, I'd be like, let me tell you about this book.
That's cool.
Pitch up the book on there. And usually we'd see like some sales randomly. pop up
Yeah.
from that. But we absolutely learned that we need to building our email list a lot more. We do like periodic sales, like holiday sales and things like that. That pull some pretty big numbers for us. Anytime that we release a new book, we leverage our email list. I think we sold like 700 physical book, like paperback books whenever her book 7 came out. Just based on pre-orders from
That's
our
awesome.
the mailing list. So we do lean on that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's pretty
that
valuable.
seems to be pretty thematic. I talked to Gordon Carroll just recently. His episode's coming out tomorrow for us, for listeners. It'll be a week in the past when they hear this. But
Podcast time.
yeah, podcast time, exactly. It's like you're time traveling kind of. And he's probably the exception to where he's able to continue to just run his whole funnel on through ammo on Facebook, and he's doing really well with it. Although he did talk about the power of cross sales, or cross channel sales with Amazon. I'm not advertising big enough that I'm seeing the cross channel sales. But yeah, it was when I got shut down that I realized I need that library avenue really strong for me. I need libraries to buy my books, so I need to have those relationships, because the less work you can do for the more sales, the more writing you can do, or the more game designing you can do, and that's, I think, super important, because when I first started ammo, I was so mentally overwhelmed. It felt like bricks on top of me just to understand the system. Now I understood it worked, so I was really invested in it, but figuring out when to even do simple things like jump on Twitter and interact with my following there, or write my book, or do any of those things, it was just so mentally taxing that I was struggling at first. And now I balance it a whole lot better. But it's hard at first.
I like to recommend 20 minutes to 45 minutes of social media time a day, and then that's it. Shut it off after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what works for me.
Yeah, for sure. It is. It can be consuming. I built up my Twitter following. I started in March of 22, and by March 23, I had 22,000 followers, I believe, was where I was at. But I mean, I was literally treating it like a day job for a while, because it was the only way I knew how to get people listening to the podcast or interacting with me, understanding I was a writer. I didn't know anything else. I'd paid money for other things, and nothing was really working until ammo came along. But yeah, how I was on Twitter was not healthy, and I'd never go back to that again. So
social media does not bring out the best in people.
It doesn't. And I don't think a lot of times, there may be exceptions. I've heard that Book Talk can be really a great avenue for some authors to sell books, especially paperbacks for some reason. But the TikTok is life sucking. It takes so much time, and very often you get no interaction. And at that point, you're like, I spent a fair amount of time putting that together for it to just do nothing.
From a person who knows a whole lot about telecommunications and how programs like that work, the security issues on TikTok alone will keep me away from it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I do know that. Sometimes I wonder when, and this is years back, because I did have a secret Twitter account for a while that I was not very disciplined on. But at one point they shut me out until I gave them a phone number. And I was like, you can't hold me hostage to get my phone number. It seems so unfair. And my friend John, he does the intro for this podcast. He said to me at one point, he's like, well, man, you don't realize that they already have your phone number. They're just asking permission to use it. So that was kind of the moment when I realized, okay, you're right. I'm completely exposed. Like, all of my security's out the door already. So I gave him my phone number, but I've always felt a little iffy about it.
Yeah. Well, even like Facebook has shadow accounts on everybody as far as tracking goes for like advertisements and things like that. And by shadow account, I don't mean covert operation stuff. What that is a account that they build up for you, even though you don't have a Facebook account, so they can track your movements online.
Oh my gosh.
So they can then build an algorithm out of it and advertise better to you.
Wow, that's insane.
So if you're like, I don't have Facebook, I've never used Facebook, I've seen really compelling evidence that things like that happen.
That's really, really crazy. It's hard to believe.
Sometimes they don't merge them properly, or they get like information wrong. So if you've ever gotten like an ad for something that's completely out of character, just way off, either the person making the ad screwed something up, or the algorithm like crossed some wires.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. It does make me it makes me want to have a really robust email list for sure. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is to have that backing that you can reach out to your email list every time a new game comes out, every time a new book comes out. Make sure that those people know, because my feeling is even at a 1% conversion rate, there's a certain point where you're just basically bulletproof at a 1% conversion rate, and that's amazing. That's a cool thing to think about.
Yep. But you have to constantly be making new products.
Yes.
That work.
Yeah, that is true. Do you feel like your games are more evergreen? Sorry, you're going to talk. So say your thing and then answer that question. Apologize.
One of the things I talk to people about whenever I do conventions is that adding a new product is multiplicative. So the effort that you put in to advertise 1 book, 2 books, 3 books is absolutely monumentally more than it is to your 4th, 5th, 6th. Like the more books you have, the more profit you're going to make because of just having more volume, more backlog.
Yeah.
As long as your books are consistently good, you don't jump the shark somewhere in there. Your best thing you can do for your marketing business once you get an established foundation down is put out more books.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people will even say putting out more books in the beginning is good. I think Steve might even tell some people like, yeah, you can join the program, but understand that before the 3-book point, you're going to really have a hard time making this thing work for you.
From what I've seen, the math that I've seen from doing this for as long as I have is that 5 books is generally the profitability, good profitability break point.
Yep.
At 1 and 2, you're going to be spending money to get your name out there. You're not going to be it's not going to be a good investment. And 3 books, you're going to be breaking even. You're going to start seeing a little bit of growth there. At 4 books, it's a significant jump, but not nearly as big of a jump as the 5th.
Wow.
And it's something I've seen consistently helping out other authors.
Yeah.
I don't have any physical data that I can go, and here's all my data on. But it's from me working with other people. Every time people are, I put out my 5th book, and now I'm making money.
Wow.
And that seems to be the magic break point for most people. Your mileage may vary. Some people need more, some people need less. Some people lighten the bottle and put 1 book out and they're done.
Right.
But statistically, I'm not that way.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing to think about. I do agree that occasionally you'll have Andy Weir sell The Martian and just things go crazy for him, and I would love for that to be me or anybody that I speak to puts 1 book out there that for reasons you can't fully understand just catches lightning by the tail. All right, let's see. So
my games being evergreen.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. My games are an evergreen product. They're always going to be a thing that I can sell. As long as you don't own a copy of it, you're good to buy a copy of it. But the way that we sell my games is that it's just like with our book series. The most money that we make is from the markup, from the upsell. So we sell this game, it's about $25 on our website. We make an okay profit off of that. But we also sell game mats. So when you buy one of our games, it pops up with a pop-up. Each player could play with a game mat. It just is a mat you put on the table that shows you where your cards go. You absolutely don't need it to play it, but it's pretty. And people, gamers, like accessories.
Yeah.
So we sell those for about $10 each. And there's a good markup on those. And you can sell 2 to 5. It's a 2 to 5 player game. Whenever people click on that, I want max markup. Yeah. So it goes from being like a $25 purchase to a $75 purchase, and that's where we make most of the money from the game.
I love that. Have you done any of that with Lydia's books, where you have any kind of accessories, bookmarks? I don't know. I can't even think of things, but
we do. We have a whole swag store. But that's done through companies like Printify and stuff like that. Yeah. We every now and then sell a T-shirt. Mugs are pretty popular. We give bookmarks away at conventions, so we don't really sell those.
Sure.
But pins, buttons, stuff like that, you can get all that at lydiasherrer.com, on our store. Mm-hmm. But it's all out of our hands. We never see that.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So it's done by Printify, which is print on demand Shopify thing,
Gotcha.
I think.
Yeah. So it's
and
integrated with Shopify, but basically
Yeah.
it just runs in the background. So somebody goes to the shop. I am curious about this actually. As far as your upsell goes, I know that Shopify itself has a program that allows you to add upsell to your checkout. So you do that. And then does it also integrate those accessories that you have as well? So it'll do the upsell plus accessories?
Yeah, so whenever you go to lydiasherrer.com, you go to our store, and it'll have like a list of all the products that we offer. Most of them are books, but we've got links for like other merchandise and stuff like that. So you get t-shirts and things. Whenever you buy a paperback or an ebook or whatever from it, we have programmed in the option to get to offer an upsell. We like almost always offer an upsell whenever you go through our books. We don't do enough of other merchandise sales to make it worth me figuring out what would be a good upsell for each piece of merchandise.
Yeah.
But we know it with books. We know if somebody's buying book 1 and 2, book 3 and 4 would be a good upsell.
Yeah.
It makes sense that way. But we don't really mess with merchandise other than that, other than our games.
Yeah. I guess last question, then I want to make sure that everybody is pointed toward all of the different places you've said, lydiasherrer.com. So that's going to be where people go. But my last question is, do you both really enjoy making the product? The reason I'm asking is because you'll see a lot of ads on YouTube, especially if you're me and you've tried sales programs. I get targeted for them all the time, but I see things all the time about people who are like, hey, the worst way to do something is to be stuck in the rat maze or whatever of having to create content, create.
Yep.
I love writing. That's why I'm doing this. So for me, writing is the reason I do this. I don't do this to make money, although I have to make money in order to do this. Do you guys enjoy it?
Absolutely. I love working with the family company. And it is a family company. Like my 4-year-old has discovered capitalism. And one day he asked if he could help me package some books, and I gave him a quarter because he helped me.
Nice.
Like, he knows all the book titles. He knows them all by color. He knows them all by number. So I'll give him the printout of an order, and he'll go get the books and he'll put it on the stack with the rest of them in the package. I couldn't do that with any other job.
Yeah.
Every day I wake up and my 4-year-old is standing by the basement door, ready for me to go down to my office, going, "Daddy, do you have any paying jobs?" Like it's beautiful. And like,
absolutely,
I get to see my kids. I get to talk about the product that I love nonstop, and I get to work with my wife, and I get to live on building a future for my family.
I love it. I lied. I have one more question. You are a little bit different than so many people in that you keep the print books, the paperbacks on hand. So there are companies that will fulfill the paperbacks secondarily for you, and you lose some margin, but you also kind of get rid of the headache of shipping them yourselves. Can you tell me, why do you do it yourselves? Why did you hire somebody to do it for you in-house? What was the payoff for you?
Well, so whenever we first all started talking about, by all I mean like us in the Ammo program, when we got together and we're thinking about doing paperback books, because I personally had started doing paperback books, and other people were trying to figure out how to do it as well. We were just used to already like having books on hand because we would take them to conventions.
Yep.
And we had a small eventing store set up that you could buy books through, that we got like 1 or 2 orders every now and then.
Yeah.
So we had that product on hand. We were just used to doing it ourselves. And then I started looking into like Lulu and Book Vault and places like that ship books out to people. And I started hearing horror stories of people that, like, had we known there was an issue whenever it started, would have been very minor. Would have been just like me sending another copy of a book out or something like that. But then in the end, had like people having huge bad reviews happen and stuff like that.
Okay.
Because a company would sent out a book and it was the wrong book, or that things were damaged, or book shipments never got there. And by the time that the author realized that there was a problem, it was a massive problem. It wasn't just like customer got something wrong. It was a customer that was not being allowed. And I just didn't want that experience. I want to be involved in every step of the process whenever my name is on the product.
Absolutely.
So whenever whenever I'm sending out books, whenever I'm sending out games, I want it to be me that does the quality control on it. That has the hand in everything. It doesn't have to personally be me. Like, it can be the people I have working with me that are packaging books, that they're quality control and stuff, and they're making sure that the orders are done correctly. I'm not like helicopter momming over them while they're doing it.
Yeah.
But there's a person that I can talk to that's like right next to me where they're working, that's doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
So if they're like, well, this book is bent slightly, what should I do? And grab another one or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can't do that whenever you're having it packaged and sent by somebody who's in a completely different state, or maybe not even in the U.S.
That's right. And then, so the tag-on question to that is, who are you using to print? Because I'm assuming that you're going with like maybe an offset run or something like that, because you can get them quite a bit cheaper, or? Yeah,
so we are going with a company called Believers Books, a guy named David Sheets. I talked to him at 20 Books Vegas. But he had been talking to him for a while, but I personally met him there, and he's great to talk to, great to work with. Haven't had any problems with it. We ordered a round of books. Our original shipment was 5 pallets worth of books.
Wow!
So they just came by and dropped them off right in front of our door. We didn't have nearly as many problems as we have at Amazon.
Yeah.
Because like whenever we get books from Amazon, I have pictures. I have just folders full of pictures of terrible boxes for Amazon to send me. Like, there's 700 books in one box, and the box is twice as big as it needs to be, and there's no packing material. Yeah. Congratulations. Every one of those books is not worth selling.
Oh, jeez.
One box of books we got, somebody poured like the cleaning product in it, like a Clorox or something like that. So we opened it up, and there's like the smell of bleach and cleaner. And all the books are wet.
Oh my gosh.
We haven't had that since we switched everything.
Yeah. Wow.
We're actually doing like the next time we talk, I will be in a completely different setup, because we're moving our like office and where we do things, or we're new things, so we have more room. We're doing some major changes so that we can have more storage space to put books in. We've been looking into like getting warehouse space and stuff like that. So we can keep up with that.
That's phenomenal. That's a dream of mine. It has been for a long time. I know that there are logistical nightmares to having that many books on hand, but I really am I'm personally attached to selling paperbacks. So having 5 pallets of books show up at my house would be a really exciting thing.
Those 5 pallets were just book 1 and 2 in our novella. So like we have, if you like the walking into a place full of books, we have racks of books. Once I get our new place set up, I'll take pictures and send it to you.
Yeah, please do. I'll update some podcast show notes with it so people can actually see it, because that's really great. Going back to Michael and Robin Sullivan, they have a place that they call the Annex. I think it was an old church building, just full of books. So kind of a similar thing. I've not seen that either, but they talk about it with this just sort of reverence that that they've been successful and they've enjoyed it and love it. And they too love sending out physical books. I don't want to take any more of your time, David. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope to have you on again, like you said, again in the future. But before you do run off, let the listeners know where they can find you. And if there's a specific deal that you're running right now that you want to point out to them, let them know what that is, and then give it to me and I'll get it in the show notes.
Okay. I'll look into getting you a discount code or something for your show notes. But you can go to www.lydiasherrer.com. That's SHERRER. And that's where you can find everything. Our store is there, our schedule's there, everything that you need to know. You can get my game on the store as well.
Perfect. All right. I look forward to it. Thanks so much for your time, David. Really appreciate you, and good luck out there.
No problem.
Thank you for listening to TRBM. The theme music was provided by the ever-talented Christopher Talon. And hey, if you liked what you heard, share this show with other readers, because what's the point of telling stories if nobody's listening?